Even though we're still talking about journalistic norms and routines and practices, I want to do this video to talk a little bit about the attribution of quotes in news writing style, because this seems to be something that is a little bit difficult for people switching to the style of news writing for the very first time. So I want to turn your attention to the attribution of quotes resource on Moodle, which gives you some examples if you were to interview, say, for example, Frank Murray. Let's pretend this is an assistant professor of history at Oakland University. A quick parenthesis to always double check the job title, the function that your interviewee has. Just as an aside, Oakland University's structure has assistant professors, associate professors, special lecturers, adjuncts. So it's very important that you very specifically identify what that person's job is when you attribute it in order to establish the credibility of your source. So let's say you have a quotation from this Frank Murray, and he has this 2-sentence statement. I want to see him try the campaign. He has good values. In AP style, which is the style of the Associated Press, which is most used in news writing, this quote must be split into two. So the first sentence will be followed by the attribution. So I wanted to see him try the campaign needs to be followed by the attribution. Who says this? And that is because in news writing, when we're reading stories in print or online, we need to know right away, why am I reading this quotation, right? So you will do the sentence itself, you will add your comma, and then you will end the quotation. Note that in AP style, the comma goes inside the quotations. And then you will have to follow by the attribution. The attribution means full name, comma, the title, comma, and then the verb for the attribution is almost always said. I always tell students I would rather you use said too much, and I start encouraging you to think about synonyms than for you to use anything else. And always in past tense for print and online news. So Frank Murray said. Frank Murray, assistant professor of history at Oakland University, said. And then you will do a period, that sentence is over, and then start a new sentence, new quotation marks. He has good values. Again, period goes inside the quotation marks at the end. So in this particular resource, I emphasize, make sure that you split a long quote and insert the attribution after that first sentence. It means the attribution comes after the first sentence of a quote. It means you have to use said. If you want to, if the ideas are very separate, they could be 2 different paragraphs. And then if you really want to, you can add Murray added. There's no strong and firm rule if you need to do this or not, but if you want to, you can. Second time you refer to a source, you will be referring to them by last name. We are not on first-term basis as readers with our sources. And then you still have to add the attribution even after the second sentence of a quotation if it's in a different paragraph and there's a little bit of distance between them. So there are some rules for attribution that I summarize here at the very end of this resource. And then if you go back to the lecture title, Journalistic Norms and Routines for this week, you will notice that starting with slide 7, I have some tips about interviewing and how to attribute the quotations in particular. So this example with Frank Murray comes again. I also talk about the idea of the last name. I also include the summary here. It is that important. That's why I'm doing a third resource now on the attribution of quote. But also very importantly, there is a practice. We have 3 questions that assess how well you're understanding the attribution of quotes. So please make sure that you do this carefully and you're paying very close attention. Okay, what kind of quote do I have? Is it 1 sentence? Is it 2 sentences? Are we referring to the person in last name or in first name? Are we using said? Are we using another verb? And also, very importantly, what is the order of the subject and verb? Kartaya said, or is it said Kartaya? So see if you can find that in the instructions and the examples that I offer, because that also is something that is graded on the quizzes and that I pay attention to. Not just the use the right verb, said, when you're attributing quotes, not that you are using the correct time, said instead of say in present tense, but also the order, subject plus verb. So make sure that you get that right as well. So I hope this is useful, and if nothing else, a little additional impetus to pay very close attention to the attribution of quotes. It's one of the most visible ways where people make mistakes in news writing as they're starting to write news and short stories in the news writing style. And like I said, there's a lot of places where you will be graded on this particular issue this semester. So I hope this is useful.